Welcome to the Strong Roots podcast. It's all about interviewing everyday, ordinary Christians who have strong roots of faith and then applying it to our own lives. Whether you are seeking, whether you're new to faith, or maybe you've been following Jesus for a really long time, come grow strong roots with us. Hey, Strong Roots. We're here with Pastor John, and we are still in our truth-seeking time. And actually, today we're talking about all of the things we consume, whether that's on our phones, TV.
So media, not food.
No, not food. But even just billboards.
Yep.
In the restaurants there are things constantly going on that our minds and eyes are taking in. And I think it's so important as Christians to talk about what should we be consuming media-wise and what should we not be? What should we be turning away instantly and not allowing our minds to further go down that road? So, Pastor John, right off the bat, is it easy for you to filter what you consume media-wise, or is it hard?
You know, I think I take a heavy hand to this, and it's something that obviously our family is really passionate about. But I mean, for us, we will just eliminate entire avenues of communication that we don't have control over.
Right.
For example, years ago, I saw TV ads start to advocate for worldviews that I felt would be harmful for our children, and we don't have a lot of control over that. So we just said, hey, we're not doing TV in our house because kids are so innocent and easily, they're not innocent. They're born with a sinful nature, but I think they're so easily influenced. The other day, years ago, we were at the library, and there was a book about a crayon that, it had a red inside and a blue wrapper, and its parents told it, you need to draw blue, but it couldn't draw blue. It could only draw red, and no matter how hard it tried, and then it found, a special crayon that helped it change its wrapper and whatever else. And I was reading this to my kids in the library at the Wheatfield Public Library, and it's interesting, this book, Amazon gives it away for free. I looked it up.
Really?
Yeah, Amazon gives this book away for free, Obviously, that's super demonic, like mutilating a child's genitalia is about as severe as you can get,
right?
And that's essentially what this book was advocating for. But it's such a, really seemingly innocent level, just a crayon that's supposed to draw this, but that. But we know what this book was about, and I just recognized I am not going to let my kids have access to something like a TV unless I can guarantee I know what the content's going to be about.
Absolutely.
So we remove that. We don't let them do like YouTube and things like that. And even for me, on Instagram, I would see things pop up that I didn't want to fill my mind with, particularly, you'd get in my age and stage, it'd be a lot of girls' booties. And I said, hey, I don't want Instagram on my phone. I'm not doing this. I want Instagram on my phone for that reason, but I don't. And so what we started doing was we just deleted it off my phone, and, Preston, our social media manager, manages it from online, which I really appreciate. But again, it's just a really big deal. We have to manage the content we consume.
Absolutely. And I think when it comes to parenting, when it comes to our own lives, so say, let's use this crayon book as an example.
Yeah.
So you're reading it. I think there are opportunities in our lives where we can make it a great learning opportunity for our children. Like, hey, we're going to talk about this. We're going to talk about what is the truth in this book and what is the ungodly truths in this book. How do we know in our personal life and in our parenting life, for parents who are listening, how do we discern what's a great opportunity for me to teach my kids truth and lies, and what is something I should just put down?
Man, that is I don't think that I can give a great, clear answer to that.
Right, without becoming legalistic.
Yeah, without becoming legalistic. I will say, I think end goals are things to think about all the time. Obviously, I want to prepare, not protect my kids.
Right.
And I think at the end of the day, there are workouts that I can ask a first grader to do that are appropriate for a first grader, and there are workouts that are not. And I think what a lot of, you meet coaches who just want to make their teams happy, so they never push their teams very hard and their teams don't win. And I think spiritually I see, and they get slaughtered on the field, and spiritually I see a lot of parents do that too. They just don't push their kids to learn. Right. And then there are other people, they just don't train their kids at all. They don't do anything. They don't have practices. They don't have whatever. And I want to practice and prepare my kids to meet the real world. So every single time we have an opportunity, we need to sit down and say, okay, is this something that I think that they can handle?
Right.
And also, sometimes I don't think they can handle it, but I know they're being faced with it at school. Our kids go to the Christian school, but they come back all the time and say, hey, what does this word mean? What does that mean? And it's like, wow, because I don't think there's the line that there used to be between Christian and public school as far as content, because all the kids at school, not all, that's total exaggeration. Some of the kids at school are given unmitigated access to, screens, which I think is, really highly inappropriate for young kids. But nevertheless, they do that. And it's like, hey, we need to prepare our kids for this, even though I don't think they're ready. Like, we have to, because they're going to encounter it.
And I think there's some things that none of us ever should have to see. Like, I don't feel like our kids should ever have to see pornography. I don't ever want to see pornography again, personally. Like, there are things in our world that is socially acceptable that are so harmful to not only our minds, but our souls.
And I think that's I think we need to talk about why these things are harmful. I mean, obviously, I have a lot of people who are new to Christ asking, why is pornography a thing? You're not really hurting anybody. You have, but first off, it's an industry that does hurt people. Secondly, there's a great website called Fight the New Drug that lists off all of the data that tells us, porn is a deeply harmful, essentially a drug that has similar effects on your brain as methamphetamines. And, obviously I would not be okay with exposing, a 5-year-old or a 10-year-old to hundreds of people having sex in front of them in the same room.
Right.
But like, and if that were happening, we would be like,
we go to jail.
Yeah. Put the parents in jail, stop this from happening, whatever. But then we're like basically shrug our shoulders and say, oh, it's going to happen. The average age of exposure for children, for boys, is 8, and for girls is like 12. And we just shrug our shoulders at what I consider to be pretty extreme child sex abuse.
They're going to see it anyways eventually.
Yeah. And I think we really need to shift our mentality when it comes to content. Like, that is sexually abusive content for children. How hard would you work to protect your children from a sexual predator?
Yes.
I think really hard. But I think we also need to protect our minds.
I was just going to say that. Like,
from
we are
sexual
children. We're
predators.
God's children.
Yeah, we are God's children, and I don't see a big difference. I mean, I was just reading some studies the other day that talked about the number of sexual partners you have and self-professed sexual satisfaction. And all the data tells us, the fewer partners that you have, the higher level of self-professed sexual satisfaction you have.
Right.
And that's really interesting,
That's amazing.
Yeah, ChatGPT was stumped by this and like making guesses as to why that would be or why the data would be corrupted. But the data is pretty consistent on this. And I think that the world and Satan advocates for a path that is going to be harmful to us,
right.
And I think our eyes and our minds and our ears are windows to the soul. I mean, I got a lot more conservative about this, but music, we just actually had this big conversation with the church. We were playing instrumental songs that were from the American Top 40. And I just said, hey, pick songs that are instrumental off the AT40 because everybody will recognize them.
Yeah.
And then people were like, Pastor John, have you read the lyrics to some of these songs? And I was like, no, I haven't. Let's check it out. And I read it and I was like, oh my gosh, like, I need to confess my sin to God. Like, I'm not old enough to read the lyrics to these songs at 38. Like, this is awful. And I just think, man, like, I want my heart and mind to be reserved for you and for my kids. Years ago, when Kristin and I got married, like I said, we got rid of a TV, and we haven't really had that, and we don't really have Netflix or anything like that. I mean, we borrowed people's accounts, which I think now is probably morally questionable. We probably, we don't really do that anymore either. But it's amazing to me when I used to watch movies all the time. And TV all the time, how I could watch somebody get killed, or, I could watch somebody get beat in a fight, or, I could watch people say crude things to each other and laugh.
Right.
But today, it's like, wow, I am a lot more sensitive, and I like that. Like, I like that I'm amused by simple things more.
But I love that that's the truth, because I grew up in a house where TVs were on all the time.
Yeah, your house was crazy.
I probably watched more TV than, like,
They literally had a TV in every room.
It was always on.
Kitchen, everywhere. Crazy.
I watched so much TV.
Yeah.
And I just love that because we have taken that away from our lives. Like, it's not like, oh, well, I watched too much TV. Now I guess this is just, my mind's just always going to be that. Like, I have seen the reversal of innocence in my own mind by monitoring what I'm consuming. And to go off this, like, how do you know what you should be watching? Because there are a lot of shows that are questionable. There's a lot of things. I love to read, and sometimes I'm reading books, and you can barely read even a teen book without there being sex scenes anymore.
Oh, yeah.
And I would say, I'm curious if you would agree with me. For me personally, when I'm reading a book or watching something, if I am obsessing over the sinful action, if I'm thinking about it constantly, if I'm marinating on it, if I find myself thinking about whatever it is, that's a sign for me that I need to put the book down. Like, if it's glorifying sin and I'm enjoying it and meditating on it, That's my sign that I need to put down, whether it's a show, whether it's a book.
Oh, yeah.
And what is that verse? It's like, whatever is true,
Philippians
whatever.
4:8.
Yeah, you want to
Yeah.
quote it? Like that's
Whatever
how
is true, noble, lovely, right, praiseworthy, think about such things.
Yes.
Instead of like directly preceding it, he lists off a bunch of evil things that you can meditate on. But I mean, the point of this podcast is really talking about, I believe it's apologetics.
Mm-hmm.
And here's the big thing is Satan's plan is normalized. Sin is normalized through these things. And what's crazy to me is 20 years ago, the thought of mutilating a child's genitalia before they'd even sexually developed, allowing a child to do that, gender hormone blockers, all this stuff would be, people would be jailed. Monstrous, awful, evil. But what Satan has done, and this is so effective, through content, is it's become ubiquitous. Right? It's become ubiquitous and normalized. And I see a lot of parents who say, oh yeah, my kid is, trans or whatever. And first off, there's no way that kid had that come from their heart. That came from normalization through content, right? And to recognize, man, this is happening to children who are also humans. I have a childlike heart, right? And in the same way that some of those things have been normalized for the kid, like I need to really, and that was really like, it was specifically the sex abuse of children, the normalization of pedophilia through the trans movement that made me recognize we need to get serious about the content that we're consuming.
Right.
Even my reels, that I'll watch, things like that. We don't do much of that anymore. I've really cut back on that because, and then I think being intent about, unfollow, see less of this, reasons, because it's inappropriate. You have to really curate your feed because you can stop seeing these things, but you have to be intent about it. I don't do TikTok. I downloaded TikTok once for like an hour. You and I downloaded it literally an hour, and in bed we watched it for an hour and laughed, and it was like, we have to.
We're like, how did we just waste an hour of our life?
Yeah. And anyway, I think we're able to do so much more and better with our life because of monitoring our screen time. And then I think the data on the trajectory of a kid's life and mental illness associated with screen time. Like you spend some time on ChatGPT talking about screen time, mental illness, and children, and you'll have your mind blown the way that it's like, oh, wow, like I am inviting mental unhealth into my kid's life by failing to monitor this.
Right.
And we will fight so hard for our kids in so many ways, but, in this particular way, I think, essentially we're allowing mental illness and sexual predators into their bedroom by giving them unrestricted access to screens, and I would say it begins at an early age, but it extends as long as they're in your house. Right.
Okay. So we're talking about guarding your mind, guarding your heart, making sure that you are being selective in the things that you are consuming. Mm-hmm. Okay. I have a couple thoughts. Like, again, how do we know what is not okay without being legalistic? I think there's lots of Christians that is just hard. Like, I know we could go whatever is true, whatever is right, that verse, you could compare it to that. But I think I hear so many Christians justify really bad things they're watching or say something that's actually not so bad is bad. Like, how do we not become legalistic and not be known for our love for one another when talking about this subject?
I don't know that you can really love one another effectively through mere consumption of content. And like that can be a thing you do, but you really do it independently. Yep. That's not something you're really loving other people. And I think a lot of times like we justify doing it because we're addicted to doing it. Right. Whether it is like I'm addicted to not having my kids around me so that I can have time, just me and my phone or just me and my, hobbies or whatever it is, get my kids out of my life.
I think everyone can relate to that.
But I think the big key is reducing content, being strategic about what content you do consume. Like I haven't watched on my own, like a movie or whatever in years. I mean, I do it for At the Movies, but typically edited in high speed. But I'm actually considering watching a show called The Chosen. Like, and it's something we've been thinking about for a long time. It's a great show, but like being really strategic about the content we consume. Do I want to do this? And if I feel like I need this, man, what is my life empty on? Because every time you're watching content, you're choosing to kick something else out of your life. People tell me, oh, I don't have enough time to pray. I don't have enough time to work out. I don't have enough time to whatever. It's like, what are you removing from your life to do this? Right. Because if it's like, wow, I'm giving up physical intimacy with my spouse in order to watch a South Park episode, it's like, dude, that better been a good South Park episode, like that better been, and you think about what you're trading for these things all the time in life. I mean, all of the data, like physical intimacy, emotional and life satisfaction, mental illness are all predicted by media and content consumption, it's a really big deal.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because if you mentioned this before, like our objective is the greatest commandments: love God, love others. When I am just consuming content, yes, like watching something together can be beneficial for relationships, possibly loving God and loving others. Watching The Chosen with our kids or with each other, that could maybe fall under that umbrella, I think.
Yeah.
But I think so often we are missing out on the greatest commandments of loving God and loving others because of the hours of time.
Yeah.
And it is, to your point, when we downloaded, what did you say it was? And we spent an hour.
Oh, TikTok. Yeah.
It was an hour where we've literally gone. And even on Instagram, I will just, I'm going to go on there and see what some people are doing. And it is like,
she has Instagram on her phone, and I'm always like, pay attention to me. Put that phone down. You're just
Right.
watching,
But it'll
people
be
dance. Like
10
that's what you
minutes.
watch is people dance.
Yeah, I do. I like people dancing. But it'll be like 10 minutes. I'll be like, I'm just going to go in here for a minute. 10 minutes later, 15 minutes
Yeah.
later, 20 minutes later. And I'm like, this is not how I want to
But-
be spending my time.
And here's what I want you to get is that is establishing, even though we don't know it, a biblical worldview or a non-biblical worldview that I think is unhealthy.
Right.
A standard of living too. Like we have a really fun life. But when you watch those couples dance, it's like, do we love each other like they love each other? And
Right,
like,
right.
Way
We
more,
don't even know
But
them.
it's planting jealousy. It's doing all kinds of things that are unhealthy. And I think, I love our kids, but my favorite part, we are not great parents by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, I don't think
Right,
we're amazing or whatever else.
Yeah.
But the one thing that I see that has really benefited our family is that our kids do not have screen time. And their attention spans so much better. Their conversational skills, creativity. We didn't have to teach our kids conversational skills. They just learned it because
They're watching it.
They had to talk. You know what I mean? They had to talk. What are they going to do? We don't have that many toys at our house. We don't have screens. They just have to interact with each other and interact with us.
But I want to make sure it's clear, there is good social media content. Obviously,
Sure.
First Church has a social media page.
Yeah.
I go on there, and half the time it's to watch First Church's stuff.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, if you're going on my news feed, you'd probably be like First Church and Bible stuff.
Yeah, maybe some food.
I think I actually unfollowed. Oh yeah, I like to cook, but I think I did unfollow the dancing people I was watching after that one sisterhood. But I think I just want to make sure there are, to your point, Chosen is really good. There are good social media things that you can follow that God's word doesn't return void. I have read things on there, read verses on there that have really ministered to my heart. But I do think that we need to monitor it. So I have a really just logical, straightforward question. And maybe you know statistically what the answer is, but what is the ideal time limit you think or research says we should be watching and consuming media?
I actually just heard this the other day. I believe it was between an hour and 45 minutes and 2 hours a day max of screen time, where it's, that would be the max high end for this is not harmful.
Right.
But I would just say to everybody, I think when it comes to content and protecting your faith and making a thriving faith, I think instead of being strategic about what we don't watch and what we're against, I think we need to flip the script and be strategic about what we do watch and what we do listen to, and I listen to a ton of biblical content because I'm not, watching shows, which I really, really appreciate. I think it's good. And also I think the ungodly worldviews that are being perpetrated against us through a lot of modern shows. You look at season 3 of The Mandalorian, which I haven't seen, but I have read about.
I haven't seen it.
And here you have this show that is essentially saying men are doofuses, men are evil, men are terrible, and women are the best. And that's almost every show. And I think about my son or my daughters. They literally talk about how stupid men are and their toxic masculinity. They say it in these shows.
Right.
And I'm like, my son's masculinity isn't toxic. That's something I want to
Absolutely.
cultivate. My masculinity isn't toxic. It's given to me by God, just like your femininity isn't toxic. It's beautiful and wonderful. And that is an example of something that is ubiquitous in almost all modern content. I can't watch, every show, Frozen, great show. Men are doofuses and evil, and the sisters save each other. When was the last time you had a show where a man serves and saves a woman?
Right.
I don't know. Can't remember. Doesn't happen. And
I'm trying to rack my brain.
yeah, it's hard. It's been a long time.
Branch, maybe.
Yeah.
Didn't he sing True Colors to Poppy?
Yeah, true colors shining through. But that was, it's interesting. But I think that understanding that an ungodly narrative and an ungodly truth is being put into almost all content that we watch is important. And so if you're going to consume content or you're going to let your kids consume content, I think you need to consume it with them and make it a, at the movies exercise where you say, okay, what was the truth in this and what was untrue? The other day we were at Disney World, which was a special trip.
Yeah.
And we were watching them do the fireworks, and they were projecting all the movies on the side of the palace last night there. And it was magical. I mean, it was truly amazing. It was a really special night. And they were talking about how special each person is. And Aurora, our 5-year-old, says to Mom, it's really not true that everybody's special. I mean, God is special, and he made us, and he created us. But, it's just not true that we're that special. We're not God. That's what she said.
Yeah, but I think it was like, we're all good. Like, we're all good, too. Like,
oh, yeah. It was removing depravity from us.
Yes,
yeah.
yes.
And Aurora was able to see through that, right? She's 5. And I think part of that is a testament to we're super strategic about defending our faith in the content that they consume and teaching her to think critically about every piece of content, even a closing fireworks show on the side of a Disney palace. And no, beef with Disney. I mean, it's everybody. It's every content creator.
Right.
Fox News, CNN, doesn't matter.
And to your point, like, we are not, I would not put us on a pedestal of like, we are the best parents. Like we fail every day. We are imperfect people trying to follow Jesus. But I will say something, if you're looking, we're talking about finding God's truth in the content we watch. This, not only do it at the movies exercise, I thought that was a wonderful example, but I think this is also being honest with your children when they ask you questions outside of media. They're going to be able to know the truth, discern the truth and untruth if you are being honest with them with the questions that they come and bring you. Because I think Aurora was able to discern that because we tell her all the time, like, hey, like we all fall short of God's glorious standard and we are telling our kids these truths. I'm trying to think of an example of something they've asked us, but imperfectly, but we all the time try to give them the honest answer, even when it's hard. Wouldn't you say?
Oh, yeah. And I would say, too, like honesty regarding the sex talk, know, I mean, at 5, 6, 7 years old, because it's amazing, if Amazon is willing to try to, groom and abuse my children through this book they're giving away for free,
right.
I need to prepare them to see, the predator that Amazon really is, or at least part of, I'm not saying all of Amazon is predator, but whatever part of Amazon that was giving that book away for free that was evil. So
okay, for someone who is watching this, what's the challenge? Like, whether parent, not parent, like what would be the one takeaway challenge?
I would challenge you, instead of thinking as Christians, I think instead of asking, what do we need to not consume?
Yep.
I think we need to flip the script and say, what am I going to consume that is going to make me more godly, right? And I don't want to define our work by what we're against.
Yep.
I want to define my mind by what I'm for and what I choose to let in. And I'm ultimately the gatekeeper, and I just want to say I'm not going to consume things that are not godly, or if I am going to consume them, it is because it's an examination of, searching for God's truth in darkness, and it's a strategic and careful consumption. But that's for adults, that's for kids, that's for families. And I just want you to know, I think your mind is worth it.
Right.
And there's not nothing, but this is one of the things I'm most passionate about in life, because I see so many marriages destroyed over this. I mean, so many of our selfish mindsets come from, social media, this entitlement thing. I just think the war against our boys is a really big deal, and that's also a war against women because it inflates, ego and other things in ways that are harmful.
Right.
But,
No, I couldn't agree more. Thank you so much for talking about this.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, this was wonderful. And thank you guys for listening. And we cannot wait to see you next time. Bye. Thank you so much for checking out this episode of the Strong Roots Podcast. If you enjoyed it, make sure to check us out on all our other social media platforms. And I want to let you know that I am personally praying that your roots stay strong.